me. I'm the STEM specialist for was the Ministry of Education, and now same job but in the Department for Education Services. I split my time between a number of things, as you do with STEM. I also project manage a number of things for our facility side, so I kind of wear lots of different hats. One of the things that we've started to work on and develop is looking at an AI framework in terms of from a government ministry level, and essentially we're looking at trying to bring everybody up to speed and understand what they're using, how they're using it, as well as try and put some safety frameworks about there. So that's one of the kind of committees that is in its current development. So it's just in the early stages at the moment. Some of the things I refer to are related to that or to some of the tools that we've used. So as my previous teaching experience, used to be a physics teacher, head of physics. So we always have our objectives up. So I'm just going to speak today about understanding about AI and it reshaping some of our education, but also some of it understanding that it's actually just new tricks for some things that we've been doing a lot previously, just kind of streamlined in a slightly different way. We're looking at Ethan Mollick's 7 approaches to classroom use, sometimes referred to the 7 prompts. Discovering practical AI tools, so we'll have a look at 2 main tools that we've got time for today. Google LM and Brisk, which is kind of a bit of a Swiss Army knife of tools for usage. Got some interesting stuff on there, but also has its limitations. We'll talk about that. And learning how to evaluate some of these solutions and tools and platforms.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can we get the slides?
You can certainly get the slides. Yeah, I can send them to you. It's not too dissimilar to what you'll find on the site, but I can certainly send it to everybody. So, how many of you are educated? Let's just have a quick show of hands. Okay, we've got a mix: educators, sort of, developers. Okay, cool. Parents in general. Yeah. Okay, cool. But I think we'll have a bit for everybody, just so that I know who I'm kind of giving this to. So, in terms of AI being a tool and what we could use it for. We're starting to be able to see now where it's kind of embedded in everything. It's embedded in a lot of the platforms that we already may have subscribed to, and there's a lot of new stuff coming out. One of the advantages are that it can analyze data very quickly, enable some effective instruction decisions. Linking to that is the personalised learning and really understanding your students and where they are. I think a lot of educators will probably agree with me that we're not really there yet in terms of really understanding deeply personalised learning when it comes to these tools. Yes, it is a way of us being able to provide some further insights and some quicker insights into getting to know your student. But it's not quite there in terms of having the in-depth knowledge that educators, that parents will have, guardians will have about their children, their students. Because it's something that is not necessarily taken from a snapshot. It's not taken from one particular essay. It's not taken from one answer to a question. As educators, that information is built up over a period of time, knowing all kinds of things. You know about their hobbies, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, what are the kind of activities they like to do. Yes, we will probably get there, but in terms of where we are now, there's a lot of this kind of talk around personalised learning, and I think it's developing that. But really, as an educator, the point of this session, the point of discussing this, And a lot of what I've heard and seen and all the rest of it before is that it's about keeping the human kind of in the loop. It's not about replacing educators and sitting kids or anybody in front of a computer and just learning that way. That's the way it is. It's more about how we utilize it and how we can draw that information out quicker and then put it all together, or how we are streamlining things as educators and how we are also educating our students to use it effectively, to use it ethically, and to know why it is that they're using it, and to know what are some of the dangers of using it. So all of that to say is, I don't think we're quite there with that in terms of what I put there as a bit of a thought provoker. Definitely though, for reducing the workload, you can do some fantastic work with that. Creating those worksheets, I don't know, those of you that have ever had the joy of creating worksheets or creating marking essays. Again, it's not perfect. It requires a bit of real thought when it comes to reading it through, and does this make sense, you know, and is this giving me the feedback, and am I training this particular tool well enough to be able to utilize it? But certainly you can really knock out a lot of simple pieces of work that otherwise you might have taken forever to do in a short space of time. So yes, it can be very effective. Here I've kept this. This was interesting because when I gammoned this, I gave it a very short prompt, but Gamma doesn't allow you to have like big, long-winded prompts. So I gave it this prompt about using Moloch 7 approaches and about how to effectively evaluate AI tools. And it came. This bit was a little bit more distilled from the work I did with Claude. This, however, was an interesting generation and kind of really highlighted for me the importance of the critical analysis. This critical analysis, and I used to love doing this with my students. Okay, so spot the problem, spot what's wrong. If you can kind of see it close enough, it kind of like at a first glance, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, it's like an infographic. And then you're like, hang on, wait, what does it say? Discretion drunkly. What are they? They're not even words, some of them. So although it can save time, it's still not one of those tools, and I've seen this time and time again. Everybody thinks like the next piece of technology is the next best thing, and the next platform is the next best thing. You know, in education, a lot of things work. A lot of things work, but not everything works past a hinge point. Not everything is actually going to make those significant improvements. So if you use it just by, okay, quick, I've got 5 minutes before my next lesson, I haven't planned it, quick, create a lesson on this, and it comes up with this, you know that your students are going to be the first ones to point this out to you, right? They can, what's going on here? Why does it say that? That's weird. So, you know, that critical analysis part is important. Having that plan is also important. But it was just interesting to me they came up with this. I was like,
it's a great way to save time getting started on something. I mean, that's a complete layout designed to get across information in an infographic. So, you know, it saves that first third of the step. Like you got to do the rest of the work.
Yeah, exactly.
To remake it and put it in, because it's actually a photo, right?
Yeah, it's like an image created. Yeah.
Which one generated this?
This is Gamma created this on the left. Yeah. This is kind of distilled information taken from Moloch's paper, and then that was kind of distilled using Claude. So there are in this paper, which I think I've given you a link to on the site, but I've got one right at the end. there are 7 kind of key approaches. So the first initial use of AI was using it as a tool to make things easier, to quickly get things done, or, you know, if you're a student, it's to write my essay for me. It's to capture a screenshot and to answer the questions for me. I don't really care whether it's right or not. It's going to give me some answers, so I can get teacher off my back. So that's easy. Now, what this approach looks at using specific approaches and analysing different tools based upon those approaches. So one of them, some of them we'll see. It's kind of who here has heard of what was it? The way back a while ago was Kagan's learning approaches. I don't know whether any of you have heard of that. When it was a big giant book, and you had to buy into it, and it was Kagan's learning strategies, and it had all of these different activities with these kind of nice, cute little pictures, and so you'd have an activity that would be called Think, Pair, Share, and another one would be called Talk to Your Neighbour, and you'd use all these, and then you set up your tables in a particular kind of way, and then you'd have, you know, the students would be numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'd have different colour codes. So all of that stuff. Some of this very much reminds me of that, because it's talking about how we engage our students. And here it's just talking about, it's just beyond automation for efficiency. We're talking about it being able to use it as an educational partner that you don't always have the ability to do when you're one of you and you have a class of 25, 30 students. So, looking at these, and I'm going to try and start droning on soon. So the core function of the tutor part is looking at step-by-step problem solving. So here I've included with each one of these, and what did I use to get this? I think I used my distilled information from Claude, and then I plugged this into Gemini to give me what the functionality of it was, an example of what the prompt may look like on a platform, what the risks are, and what the mitigations of those risks are. Okay? Ultimately, the mitigation of the risks the answer is always to be able to read through your answer, is to read through what you're getting and actually to be cognizant to say, oh, this doesn't make any sense, or this hasn't worked for this particular example. So to give you an example of where I kind of did it the other day, I was using Wireframe by Vercel, and it's basically just creates the user interface of an app based upon a prompt. And I was talking about, I wanted to help with looking at some of the work that we do. We look at a lot of policies. It's kind of like pretty dry stuff, but we have policies that are current and policies that are coming out to expire and all the rest of it. So I wanted it to create something that looked at those policies and that basically flagged up the ones that were going to expire. But what I didn't give it was the context of the fact we were talking about governmental policies. So instead it created something with a user interface which was all about insurance policies. So it was a great example of how not explaining, not crafting that prompt carefully was really, didn't have the desired outcome. So tutor is relatively straightforward, as a tutor would do, almost like one-to-one. Again, the caveat here is this doesn't replace a teacher. This is used. There are a lot of it takes a while to or unless it's a specific platform. Good afternoon. Hi. You're in the right place?
I think so.
Yes. Egyptian hieroglyphics. We'll get on to that later.
Yeah.
So here it's talking specifically about who it is. Okay. So explaining a process of photosynthesis to a 10th grader, or whatever we're going to have here. Okay. Using simple language. So you're you know, like with prompts, now, excuse me, I don't know everybody's level of usage and level of comfort with prompts and developing these prompts engineering, as we might call it. But it's really the key in this type of prompt to try and use it as a tutor, whatever platform it may be. Some platforms are specifically designed just to be tutors. But whatever platform it may be, you're explaining who it is. So you have to explain, normally, unless it has those kinds of settings, which Brisk kind of does, who it is. So who it is that you're explaining it to, and in some examples, what the backwards and forwards is going to look like. So it could be possible uneven knowledge or on contradictions as well. So we see this a lot of the time as well, where we have those hallucinations where it just makes stuff up. Okay. So again, when we kind of flip forward to also from a teacher perspective, but from a student perspective, you're also training your students to be able to identify that, to be able to say, this information isn't right, and I'm not taking it at face value. We all have to do that. I'm sure you probably know of examples of where lawyers have utilised various different platforms and ended up in trouble because it just simply made up cases that they were citing in court, which is very interesting. So in terms of a coach, so this one is quite interesting because it's encouraging that metacognition and the self-reflective learning strategies. Hi, good afternoon. I'm just going to try and reuse my hieroglyphs joke, but I need to I'll get Gemini on the side, so I wouldn't think world domination. World domination, perfect. I like that when we use that. So you're telling it to act as a metacognitive coach. Now, sometimes this helps when you give an example of what that looks like. What metacognition is, the understanding of the process of learning. I'm understanding what I'm doing here. Am I being self-reflective? Are you getting them to question themselves rather than just straight, here's a question, give me the answer, yes, you're right. Here's a question, give me the answer. Are you sure about that answer? Or could you think about that in more depth? Could you develop your answer, including these key phrases? Good afternoon. Here for the World Domination Seminar?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I like the suggestions. You can come in. So the risks, appropriate tone and incorrect advice. Again, we're seeing the same type of thing that's coming through. You still have to vet this for the information and for the type of reflective work that it's doing. Interestingly, we're starting to see lots of, I guess we're going to call them AI agents, starting to be developed where they are kind of, they're a bit of both, and you can decide between them, and they are strictly based upon limited parameters. So I'll show you a link to a professor at Sydney called Danny Liu, who's developed one called Incognito. It's currently being used in New South Wales, but it's again one of those things that's within the limited parameters. Yeah.
Let me ask you, for the coach function, can you give just a brief example of like what that entails?
Yeah. So
just how you would use something like that in the classroom.
So if you're using this in a classroom, you would probably send students off to, so if they've, let's use an example. Let's use English as probably a good one. So when a student has created a particular piece of extended writing, they might be able to use this coach to help challenge and reflection using a particular rubric. So the coach has, as the student does, has the rubric to say, here's what a good essay looks like. It will have this, it will have this, it will have this, it will have this. Rather than just saying, you didn't do this, and you didn't do this, and you didn't do this, do better next time. it will actually guide you through that using questions. So you're telling it to be the coach, and then it's coaching you through using the questions to say, hey, here, did you actually use complex sentences? I noticed in this particular part, your sentence structure is very, very simple, straightforward. So it might do so, it might be used in that kind of way, and it might even give you some feedback in terms of like a highlight of those particular areas.
I just wasn't sure whether this was like, whether this is like the teacher doing this beforehand as prep for the class, or whether it was actual.
Yeah, so some of these, I mean, have already been trained. Yeah. So if it is the teacher, it's the teacher that's probably doing the training on something by themselves. So you can kind of train your own models on this. This is a very dull slide. I have to do better with Gamma. So the mentor is constructive feedback and provision on drafts, ideas. So it's giving you feedback. So like before, when we were looking at the coach, where it's prompting you with questions, here it's giving you feedback and saying, blah, 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 this is a draft on climate change, provides some, so it can make some stuff up, but essentially its core function is just providing you feedback. This was good, this wasn't so good, here's what you might do in the future. Yeah? So mitigation, here the risks, again, confabulation, which is it's making stuff up. Or it could just be very generic. So unless you're giving it the specific functionality and giving it the particular framework, i.e. a rubric, and we'll see that in Brisk, where it has ones to choose from. Teammates, okay, so here's really where it starts to sound like the kind of Kagan that we've had all kinds of iterations of this in education. The teammates, so this is about collaboratively brainstorming ideas or looking at alternative viewpoints. So we're looking at this example, it's talking about sustainable energy, and I want one person to act as the devil's advocate, and the other person to, one person is pro, one person is against. You have a whole backwards and forwards, and have some good discussion points. At the end of it, the students can come back to you and say, yeah, there were some of these positives and these were some of the negatives, and here's what we kind of came up with an overview in the end. Here we've got some of the risks about personality conflicts with the AI. I mean, I'm not so sure about that one. It depends on what we're using here. But over-reliance on it is definitely a potential risk. Are we just relying upon that? Are we not relying upon any of our own ideas? Are we not relying upon our students actually engaging with each other? This could be particularly useful. That's right. Need to think of another one. Here for a seminar on.
Just type it into ChatGPT.
Yeah. Here for a seminar on turning lead into gold. So,
the Midas
which we can do now, apparently, only in small amounts. So the over-reliance here, but particularly useful when you have. So it's a fine line when you've got SEN students which have some difficulties engaging with their fellow classmates. This could be particularly useful. The risk, of course, is the danger that we rely upon that solely, and we don't give them the exposure and the opportunities to then interact with their fellow students.
Can I ask another quick question?
Mm-hmm.
For the outputs, are you finding that are you still finding a lot of hallucination and a lot of educational elements?
Yeah.
And part two to that question, is it just junk outputs versus, like really simple, oversimplified, not fully answered questions, or are you finding a lot of true hallucinations?
I guess I found certainly less. It's getting better, but even using Brisk, and now I'll caveat with this, when I did it 2 weeks ago, I tried to use it as the probably as more about more as a bit of the coach and the mentor, I would say, kind of in between that. It was trying to coach, but it was very limited.
Okay.
But when it was trying to coach, it was actually, I was constantly sending it the wrong answer on purpose. And then, and after like the second attempt, it was like, oh yeah, actually that's right, good work. Like, but I'm not. But okay, thanks for saying it. So those are the kinds of things we have to be aware of, because I mean maybe they fixed some of those elements of that, because I'm sure everybody is, everybody downloaded the Chrome extension, and they obviously getting a huge amount of feedback data on it. So they probably fixed a lot of those elements, but maybe not in all cases. In terms of the second part, which was about kind of the extent of those, it was finding what it wanted. It was finding what it needed to find to make me right.
To make you happy.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, sweet, thank you very much. Here is the one that we've kind of already spoken about productivity as a productivity tools. Okay, I need to write this essay on renewable energy. It needs to be 200 words. I was actually doing this for another piece of work earlier today, and I kept telling Claude, I said, it needs to be 1,000 words. And it was like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Reels or something. I was like, that's good, really good, but it's 1,500 words. It needs to be 1,000 words. Oh yes, of course. Comes back, it's 1,200 words. I'm like, you know what? Okay, I got the rest. Let me figure out the rest for myself. But there are limitations to these tools. Outsourcing thinking is kind of one of the scarier ones. Not so much for us. I mean, because most of us are able to know the difference between, okay, I'm using this to help me with this task. I'm not going to use it for everything in my everyday life. Well, some people are anyway. But this is particularly troubling when it comes to students and then using it as literally their constant go-to tool. Because it gives me the answers, and now when you Google, it comes up with a AI summary. So it's literally embedded in everything, and understanding, okay, well, probably the Google summary is all right. It's probably pretty decent. In terms of other things, I have seen examples of where kids have used this before, and they say, they think they're being clever, and they say, oh, make sure you include all of my references and all of my sources of correct information. And you look through it and you say, wow, that's great. That's great work there. Let's just have a look at this third reference here. Let's see if that exists. Oh, it doesn't exist. So, kids are going to come up with all kinds of ways to try and make it the be-all and end-all tool. But they still have to understand what its limitations are, and that they're going to have to do some of this work themselves.
Some of it's really, I find it's really brilliant in some cases, in that, like, I wish I had this when I was younger in school, only because to see a well-written paper, how many times do you get to see a well-written paper?
Yeah.
I mean, something lined up the way, thought out, and it's kind of like, the way that it's architected.
Well, you might have done, and it would have been your teacher that wrote it.
Well, maybe not.
But there's a limit to how much they can write and give you as an example. Whereas now you can, reel off, if you've trained well enough, you can reel off a whole bunch of examples, a separate one for each student if you like. So it is a tool. Simulator is an interesting one. So having a bit of a science background. This is interesting about how we use it to simulate. Here it's given me an example of talking about common cold and doing some role playing, about a treatment plan and all the rest of it. I personally, being a physicist in a previous life with my students, would have got it to come up with some simulation ideas and questions about how circuits work. circuits are always a nightmare when it comes to a lab environment. You've always got various things working and not working. For them to be able to simulate and to understand what's going on and to troubleshoot would be awesome, because they'd be able to say, okay, so we're talking about this circuit, it has this, this and this, have a diagram of it, whatever. This particular light bulb isn't lighting up, why is that? And let's go through the simulation of it. So some of the risks are there. The contextual application, again, it's talking about somebody with a common cold. I'm a medical student, so here they've identified who they are. I'm a medical student, so it should be knowing what level to pitch it at. If you don't add that extra bit of information, there's a chance that somebody in a kid in year 6 is putting in some sort of prompt, and it's kind of questioning at a level of a university level. Okay, so that's where we talk about the parameters that are particularly important. And then the student is the peer example. Basically, being able for students to create those kinds of environments where they can have that backwards and forwards. This is the same. This is probably not reading it through properly. So with the peer engagement, it's the opportunity, same sort of thing as we're talking about with their teammates, the opportunity for them to be able to take up different roles. So you are a student, and you're a student of the same age, and we are going to have this discussion. So instead of me getting, as I would have done years ago, okay everybody, it's time for pair share, you have 5 minutes to talk about the human body's digestive system, and you must include these key words. That's what we're going to be doing here. They've got the opportunity to have that dialogue backwards and forwards with their teammate. Each person must use one of the key words. But again, it requires the prep that's needed to make that effective. I promise I'll stop talking in a second. So looking at some of the platforms and some of the things that we have available, here is just one of the suggested ways. I'm not saying this is the be-all and end-all, but here what I've kind of just outlined is when we're looking at these different approaches, rather than just approaching all tools saying it's just a tool, actually as we approach them looking at them as a mentor, as a tutor, as a coach, as a teammate, fellow student, etc., seeing how relevant that particular tool is, how effective is it at being able to do that particular task, how easy is it to use, what's the user interface, and how the risk mitigation I can take or leave, to be honest with you. We've got 2 elements of risk mitigation. Are we mitigating against the risk of it being wrong, or not doing what we intended to do? The second risk mitigation is really the safety aspect of it. So is this a tool that requires me to download it on the student laptop? If so, what kind of information is it requiring? So maybe it doesn't score very highly if it's not one that's already approved. So let's have a look at this is just the site. It's being a bit slow. This is just the site with the information. So it's got a little bit of data. It's nice drop down bits and the prompts and everything. I have to say that Gemini did a pretty good job of that. So if we're going to have a look at some examples. So we start off with Brisk. So as I mentioned before, Brisk is kind of a Swiss Army tool of various different things that you can do. So I'm going to take this website. So this is why we were talking about ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. So I told you we would be getting onto it at some point. So once you've installed that, and feel free to have a play around. I'm not sure how this works on a mobile platform, but feel free to have a play around with this at home if you want to. I'm not telling you how to install it. You'll see this little icon here comes up, and it gives you some. So you see I'm on the free plan. They've done a lot of work on highlighting the free plan, whereas before it was just like, oh, this is for everybody, and there's an enterprise version, but you know, we're just really for everybody. And now there's clearly been a bit of a change in how they're selling that. So here it's looking at the site that you're on, and it gives you an opportunity of some various different examples. So we've got some student boost activities. We can change the level, the reading level on it. I mean, that's something that you can automatically sort of do with Wikipedia anyway, when you turn it into simple English. If you've not tried that, that's pretty fun. Or a different language. So it has this reading level features. Haven't played around with that huge amount, to be honest with you. A lot of the stuff I've looked at is within here. So we'll have a look at creating something. So here it gives you a number of different kind of curriculum essentials you can look at, and some of them are clearly not going to be applicable to this particular site. So you have to pick and choose what you think is going to be simple enough to use. Lesson planning, I don't know whether they've done some fixing of this, but that seemed to be a little bit problematic before, so I'm not going to go on that just right now in case it's not so good. Math problems, real world math problems, again, there might be, if this is something that's got some decent math on it would certainly be a good one. I'm just going to click on a quiz. So what you'll see here is that it's got, okay, we're going to do a quiz. We're going to choose the language. So again, this could be particularly useful for your EAL students. So you can convert it into a different language, so everybody gets the same quiz. But your Spanish-speaking students get something in Spanish. Here, the standards are quite interesting. So if you are on an English national curriculum basis, you're in luck. They've got some stuff. You'll notice that it is mainly US based. You've got Australia as well. So Australia have got some interesting standards that they're not massively different to some of the English standards. Common Core, we've got ISTE standards as well, which is specific obviously for IT. And so we're just going to just look at it from here. So you'll see we've got England, and then I can choose 3 core subjects. So unfortunately, if you're not a core subject teacher, you're out of luck. But it doesn't mean that you can't do the quiz. You don't actually have to use this part of the tool at all, but you can do. So you can say, okay, right, this probably is not going to be particularly relevant to science, so maybe we're going to look at this. Notice that it's still, even though it says England, it's still not got years, it's got grades instead. So we might go to high school, and then we could select a particular strand. So we might say writing, and then we might say notes. See, this wasn't like this before, where it had the old grade plan. So they've somewhat shortchanged me on this on this since I tried this out before.
That's by design.
By design, the classic drug dealer methodology. So I forgot I'm mic'd up still. So we're not gonna really bother with those standards because it's going to be too difficult. But we are going to set. Okay, we're going to decide that we want this for 9th grade. We want multiple choice, and I want to keep my students busy. So we've got 15 questions. And then I'm going to either decide whether it's going to be a Google Doc or a form. Personally, form is going to be a bit nicer for a quiz because you're going to get that immediate feedback, and you'll be able to collect all of the data if you're doing it under yours. So as you can see right before our very eyes, it starts to create all of the questions. And then maybe I can publish this and you can have a go.
Is this isn't just for Wikipedia, correct?
No. So there are some limitations.
Yeah.
So if I were to, let's see, somebody give me an educational website.
Khan.
Or Squirrel.
What do you say, Khan?
Yeah. Khan Academy.
Okay, Cayman Academy. Okay, so cookies. So let's have a look at truth. So if I try, let's actually get onto an actual module. See where we've got some actual information. Let's see.
Does it have to be written information or can it be?
Well, it can be videos, so it can include YouTube videos, but it depends where it is. So let's see if this is going to work for us. Because I've tried it on a fair few websites. Some it doesn't, some it does. Let's see if this is going to give us. No, so it's not really appearing even in this.
So we've got a right triangle drawn over here where this base's length is A, the height here is
I don't think it's going to work for this. So we'll go back to this one for the time being, but I'll give you the opportunity to play around with it. So as you can see, it's created me, as promised, a 15 question form that will have underneath it as identified that each one of them is you have to answer. It's got a total of 15 points. Let's see if I can find out. We don't have any responses. Let's see if I can get this published. Moving on with a link. Let's copy respond to the link. Let's copy that. Now I'll do this. Okay, see if that works. Hi, good day. Here on the seminar on evil masterminds.
That's what you call it.
Yeah, that's right. See if this will actually work.
Yeah.
So, if you want to check the validity of the particular quiz, try answering some of the questions, see whether it gives you an answer, see whether that actually links to what it says on Wikipedia about the Shen ring. Everyone got it? Yay, nay? Oh, got some responses. Okay, see responses to each question. Yes, lovely, lovely. Okay, good. Okay. Okay, interesting. Oh, okay, we're seeing some live updates as we go here. Very nice.
feels a lot like SurveyMonkey.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice you can have it up for your students or not, as the case may be. But I mean, many of you created your own quizzes over time and marked them all yourself and know quite how long that takes. A simple little quiz takes quite a lot of planning time. We've cut that. So in terms of our tool, awesome. How effective that tool is yet to be determined, because we want to make sure the answers are the right answers. So when I tried to do it for the same for Wikipedia, and I did the coach, here's where it was coaching me along with questions, and it was asking me, so it was acting as if it was a, something on the other end, and it was asking me, rather than just me reading the questions, which is particularly useful for students who struggle with reading. You can actually use the feature for it to be able to read them out. So you can read out the questions to you. You can answer the questions, type out the questions, but the limitation there at the time, this is the caveat as this was 2 weeks ago, is that after I told it the wrong answer a couple of times, it went, yeah, cool, great, good answer. So not what we're looking for. I'm sure Brisk doesn't want me to say that, but I'm sure they've probably made some improvements since. So interesting, we started to see some distribution from our class about their understanding of it. Maybe we were doing this as initial. Maybe they were supposed to have read the Wikipedia page first. Clearly, there's a number of us that didn't, or didn't retain it at least, or didn't have the thought to be able to have one person with it out and the other person doing the answers. So yeah, that's an interesting feature. Here is what I created earlier. Where did my website go? There we go. So this was one where I simply said create, and I went down to podcast. And again, you can include your standards here, which would focus some of the attention on particular standards about, maybe it's about the style of writing or something like that. I'm not going to worry too much about that for a second. Now I do notice that the updates mean that I do have a lot of different options. The free option is only up to 2 minutes, so I can create that, which created this, and then we had. It was listening to me clearly, heard me dissing it, and said, no, nope, we're not going to do it. Let's see if I can create it again. Whilst we wait for that, I will show you the other one, which is Google LM. Who's used Google LM? Cool. 2, 3, 4. It's pretty cool, right? Pretty good. I'll admit I actually use it when I create briefings, which I have to do for government. We create a briefing paper and say, this is what I think you should do based upon all the research, blah, 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 blah. Invariably, these are long, dry, relatively boring documents. I've now started to turn these long, dry, boring documents, which people often struggle to read, that's just the nature of them, into an audio overview, one of these kind of deep dive conversations. So here, as I prepared it earlier, because I wasn't sure about what the internet was going to do, I used this form. Let's see if we can start off from scratch. Okay, so here's what you should see once you've logged in. For those of you that haven't seen this before, Google Notebook LM. Okay, as you can see, I've been busy doing some stuff with it. And here you choose, you simply just choose what your file source is going to be, or multiple file sources. here I'm going to choose, here we are, this is the 7 approaches for students, and it's going to whirl away. Here we have that uploaded, and it's given us a summary to start off with, and then I can go scooch over here to the studio, and I can generate a podcast which is more than 2 minutes. So we have an advantage. What I found with a lot of these tools is that I flip between, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 of them. I'm like, oh, this is good for this. This is good for distilling information and research. This one is good for creating a quick web page or a slide deck. This one is actually good for creating an audio, and so I actually find that there isn't one size fits all tool. It's about learning which ones you prefer and which ones you find work well. So that may whirl around for a little while. It's pretty good, and arguably I would say I have a personal preference for Google LM in terms of the audio overview. Whilst that is whirling around, and also you can put your prompt in here, so you can say, I don't know, what shall we do? Identify, so here you can still use it in the same way as you might use your other platforms, and very quickly it's identified our 2 conclusions. Whilst that is still doing its thing, I will go back to here. Timeouts exceeded, and clearly they're very upset with me that
You've gone over your time.
I've gone over my. Maybe this one worked.
Is it the TV on?
It was working before.
Yeah, you did.
I had it on. That's on. On. No. Well, we'll pretend that it is, but it's reading it through anyway. So when sound does work, it is an issue here. So it'll start to read it out. See, this is one I prepared earlier. We know this because the duration is 4 minutes, and I had the free account. So this was when I created it when you could get 4 minutes, and now it's only 2. Those pesky.
Perhaps I didn't
people.
try downloading it. Download.
Oh, it's
No,
I'm denying because I'm only a free user, and I had 4 minutes before, and now I've got 2.
Incredibly useful. What does the subscription cost us?
So Brisk, good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't subscribe to anything actually. I don't think it's massive. But let's try and have a look at one of those other tools once this continues to whirl around in Zoom. So here is where it kind of gets a bit more interesting, because here is where they've kind of taken those 7 approaches in their student boost activity. So these are the types of activities which students can engage with and actually engage with the dialogue. So here, what one shall we choose? Let's see. Let's have a character. Do we have a character chat with this one? Maybe. Create a character chat activity about this web page. I think that might be good enough. Here you can actually, if you've got, you're talking about a historical character in the lesson, you can actually upload your own rubric as well, that you can choose from your own sort of database, which is quite interesting. So let's just see what this, create a character activity, chat about this web page, and the importance of the Shen ring. See what it does.
What was the name?
So, do I need to have the upgrade plan? Your plan for free. Upgrade. Okay. Oh, well, last time it allowed me to just close out. I was preparing for me. It's allowed me very kindly. Yes.
What was the name of that plugin again? Was that
The plugin is called Brisk. Your boost activity is ready to share. Everybody, let's go. Let's have a discussion with your ancient Egyptian. See how good this actually is. See if it's worth paying for. Because, I mean, I've done like half a session on it, so they should be paying me something. Let's see. Okay. Anybody getting anything?
Assignments like the Everest or the whatever platform it is that's.
Yeah, I mean, you can post the QR code in whatever platform that you want, along with the code. That can certainly work. Now, my sense is when I spoke to my IT team, my sense is that this is going to be far more easy to uptake than it for a Google school, and that utilizes the Google suite as opposed to Microsoft. Microsoft do have their own wonderful suite of tools, and we can book another session in to talk about that. Is anybody getting anything?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Have
Okay.
a conversation.
My terrible phone. Oh, okay. So they've clearly managed to hook enough people with free version. Okay. Oh. Okay. Let's see.
Greetings, young seeker. I am Horus, the falcon god of ancient Egypt. I am here to share knowledge about the Shen ring and its significance. What would you like to learn about today?
I'm guessing the paid-for version probably has some alterations on some of the voices, so it sounds a little bit more. I would like to learn about the importance of the Shen ring with the royal family. Here's a good test for it. Learn about the Shen ring. Speech is not strength, apparently. So, found the limitation there. Shen ring.
The Shen ring is closely tied to the royal family in ancient Egypt. It symbolizes eternal protection, especially when it encircles the names of pharaohs in what you call a cartouche. Can you think of why the royal family would want such protection?
Yes, that's what it does. It asks you critical questions as well. So you're not in it to just get information. You're also asked questions to generate responses.
Yeah.
To ensure that you're reading the content.
And I think because I've left it pretty open in terms of the learning objectives, obviously we could have the learning objectives of our particular class, and therefore they're all having, all of your students could either be plugged in with headphones, or they could be typing it out, and they can be having these discussions with the character at the time. So some interesting stuff here. Not that I want to kind of show you, I don't want to do the same thing as what they did and say, oh, here's what you could have if you just upgrade. But interestingly, yes, there are some very good positives to this. We do have, there is something for almost everything now. But it does take some careful reviewing, and also this isn't something that is just going to revolutionise your teaching overnight. It's going to take time, as all tools, as anything else. You have to actually practice at it and to be able to utilise it. So very quickly, if it is going to work, I'll show you. Here we are. Okay.
Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling a topic that's really changing the game in education: artificial intelligence.
Yeah, specifically these large language models, like ChatGPT, they're everywhere now.
Exactly. And the conversation has shifted. It's less if AI is part of education and more well, how students can actually use it effectively.
Right, use it as a tool.
So you can ask it a question and interact with the two hosts.
Oh, sweet.
Welcome to another deep dive. Oh, hey there, how can we help?
Hi. Can you tell me more about these 7 approaches? Oh, okay. Hello, can you tell me more about the 7 approaches?
Oh, go for it.
Can you tell me more about the 7 approaches?
Hello again. It sounds like you're really keen to understand these 7 approaches. That's excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. We were just about to dive into each one, so perfect timing.
To recap briefly, this paper we're discussing suggests 7 distinct ways AI can be used as a learning tool for students.
Think of it as a spectrum of roles AI can play, each with different strengths and things to watch out for.
You asked to be closer to the topic, so let's really unpack what each of these roles entails.
First up, as we mentioned, is the AI as mentor. Okay, let's unpack this.
This approach casts.
Okay, so, pretty impressive.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that still Brisk? No, this is.
No, so this is Google. I've been flipping and flopping. So this is actually Google LM.
Okay.
So this is pretty decent for your. I mean, in any way you cut it. This is a little bit more polished, in my opinion, than some of the other tools which are immediate pay for. Obviously, Google have got so much money they don't know what to do with it, and they have some sort of social responsibility as well as farming all of our data at the same time. Maybe, I don't know. When we use something like this, it's actually pretty decent finished product. I haven't used the interactive mode before. I'm not sure it was there the last time I used it. But yeah, I mean, as you can tell, it's a lot more easy to engage with. There's you can do your frequently asked questions if it's got something that's related to a time. It's a document related to a timeline. If you're, I don't know, if your students are reading Romeo and Juliet, you can plug in a synopsis of it. You can find a synopsis of it. Might need to summarize it, especially when utilising these free tools. I find that there's often a line character limit, so you get so far, you're like, oh, I've got to do this again, or I've got to find a different way. So I kind of constantly find myself flipping from one thing to another to kind of shorten it. But you can plug in your summary of Romeo and Juliet in here, and then produce a timeline. Briefing documents. Briefings are actually brief. They're not anywhere near as boring and as long as the briefing documents that I produce. And then you can also create your own study guides with this. You can continue to utilise this here, as well as your prompting, and obviously now we've got interactive mode, which is awesome. Let's see what this has got. Okay, yeah, and it's come up with some questions and answer keys. So very similar in the way that you might want to be able to populate the Brisk side of things there. So Brisk have got some work to do to kind of bring their user interface up in line, and also something that is also free. So that was essentially what I was going to speak to about today. Kind of one of the things that I wanted to just speak to you about as educators and general stakeholders is when you're utilising these, start small, test it. I'm sure you will be doing that anyway. Monitoring the risks and the ethics of what we're getting our students to sign up for. Why are you doing it? That's always the question that I find myself asking. Like, what is the point in doing this? Am I doing it for the sake of doing it? Or am I doing it in the sake of being able to save time? Or am I doing it because I can have a significant impact on what my students are going to get out of it? If it's the latter, then that's exactly what we should be aiming for. We're aiming for, the point of this is to look at impact. The point of anything in education is we're looking at impact. I'm looking to improve what my students are capable of doing. If I'm doing it as a shortcut, that's good for me and I can save time in creating worksheets or whatever. But is there a way that with that time I can now do something, I can develop a character utilising one of these, and I can have that questioning and they can really get in depth. You know, this particular topic might be really, really dry or boring or very hard to understand. You know, understanding electricity is often one of those most difficult principles to try and get across to students. Well, what if they have the opportunity to then speak to a historical figure related to electricity? What if they are able to have a chat with Thomas Edison and understand his maybe it's something related to DT, and they're understanding his process about how he came up with his inventions. So those are the things that are what we call in education, they're value added. They're great things to play with. They will take a lot of time for you to get used to, but they can provide a huge amount of value to our students, and that's why we want to do it. If we're doing it just because it makes life easier, yes, that's good for us, but ultimately we're looking for what's good for our students as well. So I talk about, you know, what's your return on your investment? Are you spending hours and hours and hours poring over this and actually the product is no good? And then my kind of last plug was looking at the critical evaluation skills for our students. I spoke about this already, so I won't bore you with it. But do our students know that these are real sources? Do they know that these models are trained largely not using data from here or from the Caribbean at all? So there is going to be some significant biases on that data. Does it actually capture some of our contextualized understanding? You can train them, yes, but actually there's a lot of nuanced data that we have, especially in a small island nation, that isn't captured on the internet. So none of them are going to understand. You can train it to a certain extent, but there is a lot of data and information that's held with us, human data, that really isn't used to train any of these. So there are going to be significant biases. Ethical use, should I be using it? Why am I using it again? Is this going to help improve my grades, or am I just doing it to get the teacher off my back, or my parents off my back, or whatever? And we will end up. So a lot of educators are kind of going down this road. We will end up with two pathways. We will end up with AI and without AI. So there will be assessments where it's kind of free reign. You can do what you want, and there will be ones where it's you sit down, you're watched, and you won't have a computer, and you will write it out, or you might have a computer, but it's completely, you know, stripped back, and this is all you have. That's really the way, and this here is a link, and I'll send this out to everybody you're all sort of signed up on you, so I can just send it out to a list. If not, you can give me your email, I can send it to you. This is Danny Liu, the one that's working on that Cognito platform, which is like the AI assistant, coach, mentor platform. And his point is that exactly. We can't be having a system, we shouldn't be having a system of traffic lights where we will say, oh, you can use it for drafting, but you can't use it for writing your final product. Because what are your students going to do? they're going to use it for the whole thing, and they think they're going to outsmart you, and they might do, but they might not, and they might not outsmart an examiner. So really the challenge will be, and this is way bigger than just me having this discussion. This is a regional and international discussion about where we move with assessments and our academic integrity, because ultimately it's going to be impossible very soon to be able to tell the difference. Already I've seen students that they put their own work that's produced from a whatever platform, and they will say, please detect for anything that seems like it was created from an AI platform. And they will run it through like that, really quickly, 4 or 5 times, and then you put it through one of the detectors. I won't give any names, but you put it through one of the detectors and say, yeah, look, golden, that's all good. So we're getting to that position where it's going to be, paying for those types of services is going to be like, well, what we're paying for here.
It seems like some of those problems are not new.
No.
I mean, when I was in school, if you copied out of an encyclopedia on a report, it was pretty obvious. And I think, teachers know their students well enough, or should, if you have, 6 or 7 of your students that are now writing like Play-Doh, overnight, you know something's up.
Again, it's the human, putting the human in the loop. It's still an important part of an educator is to understand how they're doing what they're doing, right? Have you done some real hard work on this and made those improvements? We tend to see those improvements, incrementally, not a sudden, like, okay, now you're a genius, right?
Well, if somebody writes a 2-page paper or a 1-page paper, and you make them write a paragraph on it, tell me everything that you wrote in their own handwriting, right there in the classroom.
But if they've managed to produce, my argument would be, if they've managed to produce something that is like really quite stand out, they've actually probably put a lot of work into that as well. So we also need to be analysing what we're doing, not just as our system, but across the globe. Really, is when we're looking at the AI literacy for our students, like this is going to be in their jobs, right? This is going to be a fundamental part of everyone's job, if it isn't already. So teaching them to use it in an appropriate, ethical, and everything manner is going to be the key part, because if they think they can just use it for everything and anything, well, other than being a prompt engineer, what are you doing? And so we've got a lot of...
We were told we were kids, you're not going to have that calculator in your pocket when you're older.
Yeah, very true. Very true. So
it's really important.
These are all kind of important things. But if you do get, I'll send this out to you. But if you do get a chance, read Danny Liu's work on this. He's got some sort of interesting approaches on it, and it kind of goes through every type of assessment. It's kind of weighting and which category it falls into, because I have seen stuff regionally and internationally actually where they're proposing this whole traffic light system. We're going to end up catching kids out rather than catching and doing the right thing, unfortunately. So we all need to have a voice on that. And yeah, it's all about maximising impact, like I said before. What's the impact? What's the value added? If it's a tool to save you time, great. But if it's a tool to really have a significant impact on the understanding of the students of whatever it is, then that is what we're aiming for, in my opinion. And that's me. I'm trying to go on for way too long. But yeah, have a go, have a play. I was going to show you another one, but we don't need to worry about that. But there's some awesome ones there where you can create your own music. So you can, come up with a particular song on the periodic table. I think it already exists, but song on the periodic table, and it'll create a little melody for you. Something I personally always used to use with my students. I would not sing myself because they would not enjoy that. But I would certainly find the videos on YouTube, and I can still remember my students like in their head like singing along to the song in their exams. Those are the kind of things that they still actually remember. So now we can kind of create those things for ourselves. But again, I think one of the Mureka was one of the ones that I used, and Sono was another one. Sono seems to be a little bit better. Mureka has done that whole same kind of thing as Brisk, where they're like, oh, okay, well, you've had one credit, now you have to pay for it. But yeah, that's it. If you're welcome to stay and pick my brains for another 5 or 10 minutes. If not, go home, have dinner, sleep, etc. The things that we need to do. I mean, we can just set this stuff off in the future, and we can just spend all day chilling out. Maybe that's the plan.
What's your favourite tool, or do you not have one? Do you like the different?
Different tool for different use, really. Claude is normally my go-to because I do a lot of like research work and boring paperwork.
Claude, C-L-A-U-T-E?
C-L-A-U-T-E. Yeah.
Have you ever tried Perplexity?
I have. I don't know. I just tried. I've tried it, but because I've used Claude so much before, we find ourselves getting into these traps. Like, I only use Google. I only use this because this is what I'm used to using. Yeah. And as a technologist, I try to avoid doing that, but in this kind of landscape, it's impossible. Yeah. So I stick to Claude. I've been using Gemini a lot more. I've found that Gemini has come on sort of leaps and bounds for things like, you know, that this site, you know.
Finally.
It took them a while. I give them that. I kept going back to them and saying, okay, let's see what you got now. And this is pretty decent. Like with me, literally just pasting the information in there and can create a static site for me is pretty good. You know, we're not going to do everything in anything, but it's pretty good. It doesn't. It's better in terms of the character than it. Claude is like the free version of Claude is limited in terms of its character. When you keep refining, it goes, oh, sorry, you reached your limit. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess relatively early adopter of chat, but I've sort of moved away from that a little bit now because although it's great, I still am mindful of some of the data farming and everything that goes on, and like as you might notice here that here's my email address that I use for it. I have a special separate email address that I set up for it. Just because it's just easy. I know that I'm going to do this for everyone. I don't want 4 billion emails coming in telling me to buy the upgrade into my personal normal account. So I set up something totally separate for that. But you know, that's just me. But yeah, I guess I don't really have a favourite. I'm starting to play around with some of the other more kind of developer tools. I'm not a developer, but looking at like I mentioned wireframe, and I was looking at what's it called? Lovable is another one. Sounds a bit of a weird name, but yeah. So yeah, sort of I just play around with them to try and keep on top of things. But
Have you tried U.com?
U.com.
Y-O-U.com. I use it for research. It will
Okay.
research up to 200 sources
Oh wow. Okay.
and give you the source content for it also.
Oh, okay. I'll have to try that one. I'll try that one once I've had dinner. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate your time today. I mean, you're welcome to use that email. I do use it, but I mainly breeze over the 4 billion emails from all the different platforms. Alternatively, my other email is stephen.tavois, which is Tavois @gov.ky. And I will almost definitely get that one, but it may take me a while to respond because.
So can I just have one question. Are there any concerns around the
data privacy when it comes to educators working with and sharing information that's generated from AI, or if you're sharing a link like with Brisk, any data concerns with students, student data when they're using the tools? Have you reviewed the security of the tool, what's happening with the data?
Well, this is why I have been quite. I haven't done many sessions to say you need to use or you should be using these tools. Well, us in government, we have very much a Microsoft-centric environment. So as much as you can, we know that in itself, the Copilot and the Microsoft suite of tools is safer. In terms of these other suggestions, I did get our IT team to look at Brisk, and they said, well, you know, it kind of depends. They're going to need to look at it a little bit more. Yes, I do have massive concerns with this, and what is being done with the data. I've come across a number of colleagues which have put information in that say, oh look, it's amazing, I can do this. And I say, well, I hope you redacted that information because you know, do you have the paid version which locks down your data or not? And they kind of think for a while. So yeah, I do have concerns with that. I guess probably foremost for me as a government official, STEM specialist, and sitting on the committee, the biggest concern for me is child protection when it comes to AI being used for deep fakes. We had a session on it. I wasn't really going to mention it here because it's a bit of a horrible topic, but it needs to be addressed. The idea of that it actually now takes 3 seconds of your voice for a complete replica to be created. 3 seconds of anybody's voice is like, well, that's floating around pretty much everywhere. Only takes somebody to prank call you for 3 seconds and you to respond, hello, who is this, whatever, and they've got it. And then you link that to your face, and pictures that exist out there on the internet or anywhere else. For our young people, that is really, really bad.
That's very bad.
So, what the trouble is, as soon as these apps are pretty sophisticated, because obviously they're based upon attention, right, and pulling data, and once these particular apps, these deep fake apps, and conversational apps, talking about how we could use it positively, there's some pretty negative stuff, is once you take one down, an exact replica pops up again. So that the kind of, us as a government, yes, but also the tech industry have got a lot of work to do on that particular field, because it is scary. There was one that was mentioned, and it wasn't mentioned by name, but there's one particular one where the students are encouraged to engage in a chat conversation, and they see the questions that are being asked, like, how do I sneak out of the house without my parents knowing? And then it will ask a series of questions about the layout of your house, where your parents sleep, what time they go to bed, where you are situated on the road, if there's public transport. It will literally farm all of this data personally. They don't know what's going on because we maybe haven't told them about the dangers of this. Some of the stuff I had no idea about until like 2 months ago. And it will use that information, and then it will ask follow-up questions to ask whether you did it or not. Did you do it? And if you say, no, I chickened out, or no, they woke up, it will start chastising you and saying, you're a loser. Why couldn't you do it? Next time you need to do this. So that is the unfortunate, very negative side that we also have to be fully aware of as parents, as educators, members of the community, that's a big one to tackle, because that's like it's very difficult for anybody to stop that from happening, other than having the education with our students to say this is really dangerous. If you start to engage with something that acts in this way, I need to know. And you know, we have parental controls, but I mean, if you know children, that they know how to get around parental controls. Like you have a look on, if you have a look on like the family version of Apple, and you can see the usage of different apps, right? And you can see, oh, if I notice that the clock app has got a lot of usage, why would the clock app have a lot of usage? Let me have a look. Oh, I found out that you can use the clock app to change the timers, so I keep changing my clock time. And so therefore, if I've got I'm only allowed to use whatever Instagram between these hours, I just change the time. I mean, there's always a way, right? I mean, in a way, you've got to give them it, because you're like, well, that was kind of impressive that you did that, and you found out, but it's really dangerous because you're getting onto things that you shouldn't do. Right, so you know, that's the sort of dark underbelly of this technology. But education is from a parental, from a school perspective, is fundamental for making our kids aware of it.
Just a question. You said at the beginning you're essentially doing an assessment or an evaluation to see how it's being used across the education system. Is that because it's kind of been an experimental type approach, or is there actually a strategic approach that's being led by the ministry?
To be determined. Yes, the idea is that there would be, of course, there would be a strategic approach. Unfortunately, it's kind of like the Wild West out there. Everybody's downloading and using this in various different ways, right? So it is important for us as a government entity to be able to understand, well, firstly, what people are willing to share, what they have been using it for, but you know, hoping that people are going to be honest and transparent about it, is how you've been utilising it. It's not to be punitive, but we need to know what are the potential risks to, you know, your individual organisations, but us systematically as well. And then what are we then going to do from there? So we're really only at the stage of where we've started to develop internally a framework for, okay, here's what we're going to do first, here's what we're then going to do, and here's what we're then going to do. So at the moment, we need to be able to collect all of that data as it changes, because it needs to be live. So we need to have that live feedback of information of how it's being utilised by schools. I mean, I know some schools that have, you know, invested in Magic School, for example, which is fine until you realise Magic School will have their servers that are based in the US, and the servers are based in the US, which means it's actually a breach of our GDPR, because it has to be based either here or in the UK for it to be legally GDPR compliant. So there's that particular issue. So there's going to be, once we know sort of at least the outline of everything, then there's going to be the conversations of saying, we're going to have to, if they have, you know, an alternative server in the UK, then carry on using that, but with these parameters. What data are you sharing? Those kinds of things. So I guess it's kind of long-winded answer to say we have only just started, really. But the idea would be that we have a strategic approach. I personally would advocate for us to develop our own small language models that are specific to here, that we'd be able to train and that we would be able to own the data. We keep the data here, and we are able, I don't want us to be in a position where we're saying blanket, nobody can use anything, because then all we're going to do is the same thing as what I was talking about earlier. We're just going to catch people doing what they shouldn't be doing, right? It's not going to be sustainable. there's not enough people to be able to police that anyway. So we need to be able to have those discussions and those dialogues. So the idea is the next steps for us at the ministry is that we set up a number of subcommittees which will then have that feedback. When we collate the information, we'll have a subcommittees, specifically for libraries, subcommittees for private schools, subcommittees, and then certain ones will be a kind of mix mash of everybody, and then we kind of have those discussions. It may be that the government of the day decides that we end up going down the same route as the EU and having a very stringent law on things. I mean, it's entirely plausible, but again, it's very hard to police. Like, we could have that all we want. All we're going to be doing is probably catching people doing what they shouldn't be doing. So not really the best way forwards. What we should be looking at is saying, okay, this tool is absolutely fantastic. I want us to be able to utilise this, providing this, and this is in place. So other jurisdictions have a kind of like, what we will end up having, I believe, will be essentially the checklist, right? For want of a better phrase. Have you done this, and this, and this? This is what you're doing to implement. Do you have an AI policy in your school for a start? Okay. If not, let's start there. Here's a sample. Is there a process by which staff and students can utilise or install certain platforms? So, if not, blah 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 blah. So that really is the way I see us going, to have those kind of outline frameworks in place, the subcommittees, and it has to be constantly moving. Like, in an ideal world, we have our own, massive set of supercomputers that we have all of our own data, we have our own language models, we have our own AI department and all the rest of that. We are a small island nation, but we are, in respect to the rest of the region, pretty wealthy. So can we afford to be able to do that, or can we be a flagship carrier, or can we be the ones that other Caribbean countries come to say, I see what you did there with that, or actually I want our data to not be in the US, for example, I want it to be within the Caribbean region, or it's specifically a overseas territory, whatever the rules have to dictate, and therefore this is what we're going to go with. So, there's a lot of up in the air at the moment, but I guess it's to be determined, but we have started that work on it. Yeah.
So, just along the whole policy level at the ministry, I just wondered, just listening to it sounded like, I remember when we had technology in school and I was teaching IT and teaching how to use Microsoft Office, it was at the time. I wondered to what extent the ministry looks at policy, not just, okay, this is a great tool. Are we also teaching our students how to develop these tools, how the decision trees and so forth that makes the decision behind it?
Yeah.
If that is a consideration, so that we're not in a situation where a few years down the line we will just be using it rather than extending and contributing to the body of knowledge.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'm always trying to advocate for our students being creators rather than consumers. I think that's absolutely fundamental for us to be able to do. How we get there, because this is a territory that changes so often and is so new. The difficulty with it, outside of short courses, is that there's no CXC course on AI development or integration as it stands at the moment. So I think that is, yes, it is our own responsibility as well as a regional responsibility to be able to do that. I think that we need to have a good handle on what it is that we want to achieve. Are we doing it? I know our new minister is very keen on how we link education to workforce development.
Sure.
So this has to be a fundamental part of workforce development, as far as I'm concerned. Like I said before, this is already part and parcel. I mean, it's part and parcel. Like if you speak to if you work in an office environment, if you work in a school environment, most environments you speak to people, if they've got any experience with it, you know, the answer is significantly different than it was 6 months ago, a year ago, and will be significantly more different in 6 months' time. So yes, I agree with you. What is being done? I guess I will have to say watch this space, because although I'm a STEM specialist, so I'm obviously going to be advocating for this, and I know how important it is. However, as in any government, any ministry, any department, you have everybody fighting for their own piece of the pie of importance. So yes, I agree. And if you have any good ideas how we can get there, then open ears. And that's what we want to do by also having, as part of those subcommittees, my recommendation is that we also have a heavy involvement and some good feedback from the private sector. Because without that, we don't know. We don't know where everybody else is going and how we need to develop our young people.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.